Hey, I'm Brandi Criscitiello, the artist. Welcome to my art show, along the county line from the White Oak River to Topsail, featuring 40 original paintings, mainly landscapes, as well as a few of my favorite things like my cars and anything else that inspires me. I was born and raised here in Onslow County, in the Maysville-Belgrade area, along the White Oak River on a small farm. I'm currently an art teacher at White Oak High School, been teaching there for 16 years now. I'm really excited to have my first solo art show here at the Council for the Arts in Jacksonville. So all of my paintings here and in general are on wood. So I built the canvas first using 1 inch by 2 inch pine to make a base frame. And then fixing like a 1/4 inch plywood. This is maple to that, so it makes for a much smoother surface, and it's more sturdy. You know, if you were to lean this up against something opposed to a canvas, the canvas would stretch, or you could end up almost putting a hole through it. This is just going to be much more sturdy. And as far as when you're painting on the canvas, it's not going to bounce. Well, an actual canvas would bounce. This is not going to give you that bounce. So, and I do call this a canvas, although it's not canvas, but it's how I make my canvas. So,
how thick is that?
The overall plywood piece is a 1/4 inch, and this is technically a 2 by 1. Or a 1 by 2, either way. So when that's fixed together, that's about 1 inch thick. And this is 4 feet by 3 feet, so 48 by 36 inches. A lot of the landscapes here are that big. Few of them are a little bigger. They're 5 feet by 4 feet. But yeah, so I really like this. I learned this in college. I had a professor who was a printmaker, and he actually would build pieces kind of like this. They were a little thicker. He would use bigger pieces of wood on the side. He would paint them, and then he would silkscreen print on top, and he still does that to this day. His name's Andrew Blanchard. So I think I took that from him and kind of changed it into my own way. And once I get done with the painting, so I don't need to paint the edges anymore. Used to, I didn't frame them, so I would paint the edges, but now that I'm using a cedar frame, I build the cedar frames, so I don't need to paint the edges. But this is just starting out, kind of getting some base layers down. The wood does soak up the paint a little bit, so you do need like a couple of coats of just like a base layer. But this is a really, really smooth surface, so you can get a lot of good blending and a lot of good detail work out of this without having any of that kind of waffle canvas texture showing through. So I think this one's going to be a painting of my dad's 76 Monte Carlo, the Bad Mama Jamma. So I got to get the exact right photo, but I've got the idea, so I just need to get the card and get the photo. So
Whenever you are starting off a painting, obviously you have all of your layers. How do you start your process of drawing what you want on there?
For something like a car, like you do need to kind of make sure your proportions are correct. So I will draw with a pencil. Most landscapes, though, I'm not drawing with a pencil. I'm just kind of making marks with the paintbrush. So kind of drawing with the paint. But when I teach my students, like I tell them, it's perfectly fine to start out with a pencil. But the more you get comfortable with it, the more that you can kind of just draw with the paintbrush and just go from there. So definitely working background to foreground. I like to use purple a lot when I'm painting any of like the ground. So any darker areas, whether it is going to be like some of the muddy parts of a landscape, or if it's going to be pavement or asphalt. If I start with a purple layer at the base and then go over, whether it's with brown or black and grays, I just like to see a little bit of that purple show through. So I think you just develop kind of knowing those base colors to put down. And yeah, definitely working background to foreground with acrylic paint.
What kind of paint do you use again?
I actually use house paint, but it's acrylic paint. You know, if I was to buy tubes of acrylic, you would go through those very quickly, painting on the larger scale. So, you know, to try to get any sort of blending or, you know, fade going, you definitely need to have a lot of paint. So I actually buy house paint and use that.
And how much does that run you when you're using house paint compared to regular paint?
I actually think it probably is a little cheaper. Maybe, honestly, I haven't bought regular acrylic tubes in a while. Even at school with my students, I buy gallons of house paint for them. So we have just a whole area of a big shelf of all different types of colors. I do encourage them to mix. They're often mixing colors to get what they want, but that is going to be, like, I feel like, a lot cheaper than me buying the tubes of acrylic. So I don't know specifically, but I do feel like it's cheaper.
All right, and from start to finish, how long would you say a process of a painting would take you?
Yeah, I feel like they're about a month, sometimes longer depending on detail, or if I have some other projects maybe going. So, you know, possibly anywhere from 2 to 3 months on something I haven't painted before and has like a lot of detail, like the zinnia flowers, or maybe even this one probably took at least a couple of months to try to do that big of a scale and get that many colors, that many trees, palms, and all of that. But for the most part, I've gotten a little quicker. I think the El Camino painting took maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months. A lot of trees and leaves in that one and reflection. But the Camaro I know took right at a month, and I was on a bit of a time schedule trying to get those done for this show. And then the Nova took just right under a month to finish that up. So, and you know, those are pretty large scale with decent amount of detail. So, but again, just the more you practice, the better and quicker you're getting.
Looking around, all of our paintings that you have done are on a larger scale. Mm-hmm. Is that easier for you to work with, or do you like smaller paintings also?
I do like smaller paintings. I also do feel it is easier. I think that if I do smaller paintings, I get done much quicker, and then I feel like I haven't done anything on it, you know. Again, you know, I enjoy the process, so to kind of be able to draw that out a little longer and have that bigger scale, and then, you know, I really enjoy how they look when they are that big, especially if you're doing landscapes or even the cars. If you have that bigger, you know, surface picture plane, it more so feels like you're there instead of looking, you know, at a smaller piece. So
I know your reception was earlier this month. How did that feel to have all of your friends and family here to see all of your work?
That was really cool. I think one of the biggest things that surprised me was actually seeing somebody sit and stare and look at your artwork. You know, sure, you know people are gonna look at it. I mean, that's what they're here to do. But to actually see, whether it's former students, current students, friends, family, actually sit and really look, you know, or kind of study the painting. Maybe they're artists themselves and they're trying to understand and see maybe what you painted first, and you know how you went about it. That was really cool to see. Is the overall, you know, looking at the artwork.
I mean, your work has a lot of detail in literally all of them, so yeah. You have to stare at them forever.
Yeah. And I think some people were finding the threes, you know, the consistency of seeing some threes throughout. Maybe the dragonflies as well here and there.
What do the threes mean to you?
So 33 was my number in basketball. It was originally my dad's number when he played basketball. So from being like 7 on up through college, I had to have number 33 in basketball or any other sport I played. So then when I needed a website, to be able to like show my artwork, you know, if you're talking to somebody and you're like, yeah, I do this and that, you kind of need to be able to show them. So after college, I decided I need to start a website and be able to document my artwork, but also if you're trying to get any commissions, you need to be able to show somebody what you can do. My last name is a bit of a tough one, so Criscitiello. It's not like I can say, hey, look at my website, BrandiCriscitiello.com, and you're not gonna know how to go spell that. So I ended up saying, okay, let's come up with like 33art.com. That's something I can tell somebody, and you know, maybe they remember a little easier. So that's where that.
And how did you incorporate that into your paintings?
I think it probably first started with painting water, and getting a little bit of a flow of like ripples of water, and sometimes intentionally trying to make threes, but then also sometimes just the way that you move the brush, it can make a three. So sometimes I just enjoy that and want to play with it, and not necessarily hiding them in a painting, but just trying to use that as like a bit of a signature in my artwork as well.
Anything else? Any other words you need to say?
I can't wait to do another art show, I guess.
I don't have any more questions.
No more questions.
No, is there something else you want to speak about? Is there a specific painting? We talked about the Camaro. Is there a specific one you want to mention?
Probably should look at this one.
This side?
Look at that, the
You wanna-
zinnia.
Yeah, we could do that one.
So this painting means a lot to me. This one's titled Blanche's Zinnias, named after my grandmother who passed at 101 in 2022. I actually had this painting already started just from my mom planting a couple of rows of the flowers and having the sunflowers in the background. So I already had taken, you know, a few good photos and wanted to try to paint that. And then a couple of weeks before my grandmother's passing, we went out on our golf cart, kind of did a ride around the farm and stopped, cut some of the flowers, and that sort of thing. And so continued working on the painting. I would show her progress photos and that sort of thing. And then once she passed and we had her graveside funeral, this butterfly, the blue butterfly, actually landed on the casket. So once that happened, I knew I had to put that in the painting on one of the flowers. So this one definitely means a lot to me. One of my favorite paintings. Definitely not an easy one with all of the leaves and that sort of thing, but one of my favorites for sure.
How long did this one take you?
This one probably took more like along the lines of the 3 months.
The 3 months?
Trying to
There's
figure.
a lot of detail in
Yeah.
this one.
You know, and then once she did pass, trying to make sure I got everything right, you know, just because it did mean a lot to me.
I mean, you even have the sunflowers in the very background, like it looks great.
Thank you. And the cloud work took a while as well, but so yeah, beautiful place. So these are the last 3 paintings that I did for this art show. I like to call it the triptych along the county line. It's got the 68 El Camino, 69 Camaro, and 70 Nova. It kind of started out with my brother, one of my brothers, Sean, saying, you should drive the El Camino down to the river. And that's normally not a car that we would take in the woods down to the river. But my other brother, Derek, was with me, and he said, yeah, let's go. And so we did, and Sean also said, it'll make for a great photo. So really that's all he had to say to get me to do that. So we go down there, and we almost got stuck because I just had lowered this car 2 inches in the front. And when you go down into the woods, there's kind of like a bit of a hump of you know, dirt and grass, between where the tires go. And so I immediately kind of thought, oh, we might be getting stuck because the car started dragging, and we were able to kind of plow through, and I stopped here and there, took some photos, and Sean was right, made for a great photo. Once I saw that picture, I knew I had to paint it, and then I figured, well, I'm gonna have to paint all the other cars. So I feel like I was moving in that direction as far as wanting to paint cars again. I really haven't done that since college, so I just didn't know where I was going to start, but that was a good starting point, and I'm really happy with how these turned out. I wanted these to kind of hang together and be, like I said, a triptych. I also wanted a good transition between their atmosphere, like the environment these cars are in, so trying to have, you know, go from the woods and the leaves and stuff on the dirt road, transitioning into, this is another scene at the farm, with kind of farm background, leaves and stuff on the ground, and just a paved road there. That transitioning over to the Nova at the drag strip, because it is just a full drag car. So I really like the way that turned out, and those three hanging together. So I think if I had to pick one piece currently, if I could call all these three one piece being the triptych, this would have to be my favorite right now. So this painting, titled Corduroy Road, this is in the woods behind the farm, near the White Oak River. This is a pathway that my brother made for us to ride dirt bikes on. And so one day, as he's finishing that up and taking me along a trail to show me the new path, I'm of course taking photos, because that's what I do. So took this cool photo, and once I saw that, I definitely wanted to paint it. Thought it was a nice composition. The palms down there are beautiful. Those are sable miners. Something that you really don't see, you know, around Jacksonville or even at the beach. So it's really cool to see this sort of environment. They really flourish in that area. Eventually he ended up having to cut this dead tree that was just hanging by the vines, because that's not very safe. But this one, a lot of people really like, I think due to probably just the overall path and the depth that it shows. When I refer to, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but the purple use in the ground, so like that muddy kind of, you know, when you're there and you're actually looking at it, maybe it's the light hitting it a certain way, but that sort of mud can give this purple hue. So I really tried to pull that out in this painting.
What do you feel like draws you most to painting landscapes?
I do enjoy being out in nature. I think it's the color, it's the light, it's, you know, because you take a lot of photos, but it's not like they're always great. So it's kind of like the colors and the way that the light might be hitting something has to be right. And then as you're looking back through those, you're like, yeah, like that, you know, that would make a great painting. So yeah, I think, you know, it's also a bit of a challenge. You're trying to challenge yourself as you go. So yeah.
What would you say is your most difficult piece that you've worked on?
Well, probably the El Camino over there was one of the most difficult, with the reflection on the hood, and just trying to make sure straight lines for the grill, and also getting headlights to be the right size. There's a lot of measuring and comparing, you know, so if I'm measuring this headlight and it's 4 inches, then that one needs to be 4 inches, and that one and that one. You know, so lot of checking yourself and making sure that you're on the right track with proportions and that sort of thing. But yeah, I was probably a little nervous going to do the reflection on the hood, but it's, again, you got to just trust the process. You look and you see the color there, then put the color there with the shape. You know, it's all shapes and colors, really, is what it comes down to. So yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. With this being your first solo show, what would you say is your favorite piece now that you see them all hung up together?
That's really hard to choose. I think most artists probably feel that like your last painting is like your best, or you're most excited about that next one. There's a lot that I really really like, but I think that the '69 Camaro painting is probably my favorite. Although like I grew up in a lot of landscapes, like I grew up in that area, so that has been a part of my life. The Camaro has been a part of my life since I was 16. That was my first car, and I've done a lot of work to it myself and kind of been on this journey with that car. And I'm just really happy at how it turned out. So I think that's my favorite, but there's a lot of them that like really mean a lot to me. So.
Who were your biggest influence, whether in art, music, or people?
Not sure that I have like one single influence. I think my parents are very influential in, I don't know, like hardworking, and they enjoy beautiful things and cool stuff. My dad, especially with the cars, and my mom more so with flowers and the beauty, that can be grown on the farm, whether it's a sunflower field or just beauty found in an old barn.
In this body of work that we have here, what do you want people to take away from that?
Maybe like to pay close attention to the details when you're out and about in nature. I find as an artist, like I'm noticing different colors that you might not really pick up if you're not paying attention. Then maybe referring to like purples that you might see in the mud near the river or something like that. So I pay close attention to patterns, colors, details, shapes, that sort of thing.
What does this work of art reveal to you that you didn't notice while you were executing it?
I think what I really noticed after seeing everything together, I think I made a statement in my artist statement that, although you don't see people in any of these paintings, they are most likely derived from shared experiences, whether it is, hanging out by the river with my family, or the painting behind you of the zinnia field with the butterfly that was inspired by my grandmother. It was a big part of my life, and the farm as well. So one of the last times with her outside was picking zinnias. So that one means a lot to me. But yeah, just that, I'm a pretty active person, so I get out and do things, and if I see stuff that I want to photograph, I'm photographing it, and then oftentimes looking back at those and seeing that I want to paint that, like that looks cool, I want to paint that, so I think the human aspect, but although you don't see people in these.
This basketball in your hand, explain to everyone what that means to you.
Basketball is a big part of my life growing up. Played from probably very little, but actually started playing like 7 years old, on up through college. So I had a basketball scholarship to Converse College. Played at White Oak High School down the road, and I now teach there. Been teaching art for 16 years there now. But yeah, basketball technically led me to art. I didn't know what I wanted to major in when I was in college, and ended up finding the art pathway, but I feel like basketball kind of led me to figuring that out.
What inspires you for this entire collection? I know most of them are all different. You have different landscapes, you have your cars, you have your basketball. Yep. What inspires you as a whole?
I think I just like pretty things, and I enjoy creating, of course. I enjoy the process. So, not only just seeing when these are finished, but I actually do enjoy the actual, whether it's building the canvas, or just sitting and painting. Like, that is a really enjoyable time for me to like just not have to think about and worry about anything else. I enjoy, the overall process, so I think I get inspired by wanting to do that more and more.
What struggles do you have as an artist today?
I don't feel like I have as many as probably I used to, and that is due to practice. A lot of times at school, in the classroom, I tell my students that practice, makes you better. It doesn't make perfect, but it does make you better. It builds your confidence. So I feel like now, with as many paintings as I've done and how long I've been doing this, I end up knowing that like I can get to the point that I'm going to want to get to, with a painting, just by knowing that I can critique myself. I can figure out what I need to do to fix it. So, if you mess something up, it's just paint. You can go over it. You just have to know how to critique yourself and figure out what you need to do. So that is a pretty cool spot to fill now, to where, I'm not necessarily scared of painting, anything technically. I feel confident in knowing that I can figure it out, I guess.
That's it. All right. No, we're good.
Transition.
We're gonna transition that. Okay. I know you mentioned that you were a teacher. What is some advice that you would give to young artists just starting out?
Yeah, I'm often telling my students just to trust the process. Something like painting takes a while, and it's not gonna come out as you want it right away. So trusting the process and knowing that there's kind of those ups and downs of, first you're excited, you think it's gonna be cool, and you start and it's not turning out like you want, and you have to kind of do the self-critique, constantly asking yourself questions, figuring out what you need to do to make it how you want it to be. And then you'll start to come over that, and you'll start to feel good about it again. So I see that often in the classroom.